Rachel, you good or bad? All right, everybody get a Bible. You should have a Bible. I don't know. Derek, are there any more back there? Okay. Go ahead and open up your Bibles to guess where?
John chapter 15.
15. Well played. John 15 is where we're going to be for one last Wednesday. And so I thought about where would I go, because I wasn't going to let you guys off without some sort of teaching of some sort. And so I didn't feel like going just like any ordinary Wednesday. But when I looked at John chapter 15, I thought it had some pretty good things that I want to go with. And so before we get there, I want you to one last time for me, I'm going to ask you questions, because we've been in the book of John since like August, okay? So literally every person in this room has been some sort of teaching through the book of John in this room. Okay, so somebody has something. And so first, I was going to ask some questions about what you remember so far from John chapter 1 all the way to John chapter 15. It's still not done. And I think that the goal is to continue through that. And wherever God leads, God leads. But, so for John chapter 3, verse 16, who is Jesus talking to? Just raise your hand if you know what John 3:16 is. I'm not going to make you quote it. Raise your hand if you've ever heard John 3:16. Good. Raise your hand if you've ever heard John 3:16. It's literally everyone. We went through it. Like, are you serious right now? Okay. John 3:16, everybody knows it. It's like the most well-known verse. Got it. Now, we all know it, but who is Jesus talking to in John 3:16? Nicodemus. Are you the only person to know that? Probably. Okay. Name the miracles. How many is it?
5, 6, 7,
8, 9,
12.
38. How many is it? Not 12. 7. 7. What was the purpose? What was the purpose of the miracles? What was the purpose of the miracles? Each miracle had its own individual purpose, right? It wasn't just to show off. Right? Correct. It was to show us Jesus, right? What Jesus' purpose was, all of those things, right? We looked at all of those miracles. Can anybody tell me their favorite miracle? Raise your hand. Yes, ma'am.
The eyes.
Why?
I love it.
Why?
The spitting.
At least you're honest. Weird, but at least you're honest. Anybody else? What was your favorite miracle? Not because of spitting, but because you actually got something from it. Yes. Why? All right, fair enough. Yes, sir.
water to wine. So it shows like how God can remove forgiveness.
All right, I like it. Anybody else? Why?
Probably because it just shows that even though we can't prove that it's you, because you're going to go to certain places and God still sees you.
Okay, I'll take that. Now, this is my last question. Can somebody tell me something that you grasped, learned from the book of John that you didn't know before? Something that you got from the book of John. That's great. Yeah, the paralyzed man got it. Sorry. Go ahead. What was your favorite? What did you something you got from the book of John?
Exactly. I don't know. Probably that
Put your trust in God no matter what, in any circumstance.
Anybody else? Anything for the Book of John? At least Rachel's on it, she said spitting is cool, but that's fine. One more person tell me something you got from the Book of John.
Can you repeat the question?
No.
How do you get to clarify what you want us to know? Like something you.
What is something you've got?
Something you learned?
Yeah,
Like a lesson or just something?
something from the Book of John, yeah.
Timothy. Because of the sacrifice.
Timothy?
Is that understand?
You got it right with T.
My middle name.
You must have learned it really well. Thomas, all right, there you go. Thank you. All right. So you guys totally disappointed me. I appreciate it. So I appreciate you going through the Book of John. I hope that you continue going through it. But how I wanted to kind of end my last Wednesday with you guys was, so obviously I've been doing this for a couple years, and I got to learn under Jeremiah for a while. I have some phenomenal adults that have been with me to teach me things as well, but I've learned a lot of things. And I've learned a lot of things, and a lot of it has come from you guys. You guys have taught me more than I can ever explain. But I felt like there was 10 kind of things that I wanted to let you guys know, like on the way out the door, to take with me. These are 10 things that I've learned, and I wanted to impart them on you for you guys to remember, okay? And the last one comes from John chapter 15, starting in verse 10. We're going to start there. But, so somebody get ready to read it. But we're going to make our way through it. So I have a couple things to give you guys. The first one is to know that you are not the future of the world or even the church in the future. You're it now. So oftentimes you get told that you're too young, that you're the future church, wait till you get older and then you're going to change the world. I don't want you to ever listen to that. It's the worst advice you could ever be given because you're that now. You can absolutely change the world now. You can absolutely be a huge impact to the church. And you're the church now. As much as we said that that's a youth group, that's a student ministry, that's our future, you'll hear it often. But you are the church now. So I don't want you to ever sit here and think that, when I get older, when I learn more, I will be willing to bet, and I've said it 1,000 times, that you guys know more and have a deeper relationship with Jesus than a lot of people that are in church on Sundays. And so I don't want you to ever listen to that. It's the worst advice ever. You're the church now. And so go make an impact for Jesus now. You don't have to wait on anything. There's literally verses that talk about that say that you can do this now. We said that Jesus basically took a youth group and changed the world. Because when you look at all the disciples, they were basically teenagers. And so if Jesus can take a 12 guys that are basically a youth group, then imagine what you guys can do now. So don't ever let your youth be a stumbling block. You can be a huge impact. Make much of Jesus at your age now. Don't wait. The other one is, stop assuming that you're the only one with problems. As many times as I've sat around with you guys and listened to you guys, and I know that a lot of the other adults have done the same thing, is that you think that you're the only one going through something, or it's the worst thing ever. We're all broken, we're all messed up, we all have our own issues. You're not the only one going through something. So don't suffer in silence for one, but know where to go with it, and that's to Jesus. Don't be ashamed to go to Jesus. You're not the only one with problems, we all have them. So stop assuming that you are. Stop assuming yours is the worst, because I promise it's not. Because to Jesus, they're all equal. So he's taking care of that. So the biggest thing for that is just to remember that you're not the only one going through something, and it's not the worst thing in the world. Okay? 3, don't stop falling up. This is what I mean by this. The sanctification process, who remembers what that is? Because I've taught on it. What is sanctification? Another one. Go ahead. In the process of looking more like Jesus, absolutely. So in your sanctification process, in this stumbling of looking more like Jesus, don't stop falling up. Okay, you're going to fall. You're going to fail. But when you get up, keep going forward. It's a long ways up. We're all doing that. So when I say don't stop falling up, keep doing that. Know that you're going to fail. Know that you're going to mess up. But keep doing it. And keep doing it by looking more like Jesus. Keep going after Jesus. Okay? So don't ever stop falling up. The opposite would be falling down. So don't do that. You're going to fall, continue to fall upwards. 4, continue to be the most competitive nature students that you are. I mean this in a good way and a bad way. You guys are literally the most competitive group of teenagers I've ever been around in my life. To the point that I remember going through student ministry and like going to like other youth events and watching like always like wishing I was a part of that youth group. That's this youth group. You guys are so competitive and literally jump in and you guys like make a competition about everything. It's awesome. But it can be like the death of you sometimes. But in that competitive nature, always be seeking to outserve one another in a good way. When you see people serving, like I want to serve more. I want to love Jesus more. So take that competitive nature and look more like Jesus with it. Okay? You guys are phenomenal, you guys are great, and super competitive, and I would take you against any other youth group in this world than against a group of games. But that competitive nature can be used to look more like Jesus. So don't ever stop using it. 5 is this one, is that real family comes to visit. And so if I'm being told that I have to come back and visit, that goes both ways. And so we're going to see who really actually does like me, who shows up to come and visit us. Because you all get licensed eventually. So if you don't show up, then we don't like each other anymore. Chip in? I'll buy you lunch when you get there. Fair. Okay, all right. It's just way cheaper than gas. You fell for it, so that's the deal.
For example, will you get McDonald's or Bo-Berry biscuit?
I'll get a Bo-Berry biscuit.
Great.
Not McDonald's.
I'm talking
Texas
Texas Roadhouse.
Whoa, whoa.
Go somewhere fancy.
I like how you played me there. Got it. All right. 6. Even when it's unpopular, it doesn't make sense. Keep seeking after wisdom. Even when it's unpopular, even when it goes against what everybody else is saying, don't ever stop seeking wisdom. You don't have it all figured out. I don't. Especially through this entire process that I've gone through and continue to go through. I'm still seeking after wisdom. Don't ever stop seeking after it. Even when your best friends that are around you think that they're telling you the right answer, and you're going against the grain, don't ever stop seeking after wisdom. You can't get enough of it. Scripture constantly talks about wisdom, how we should seek after that. And there's people in your life that can give you a lot in this world. But always do discernment with that, because make sure that wisdom is pointing towards Scripture. It's always godly wisdom. Somebody can easily give you a bunch of things to talk about. Are you seeking after godly wisdom? Right? 7, and this one I really want you to take to heart, is trust your leadership. I have something for them, but I want you to trust your leadership. I literally have heard this comment that I'm not going to give the next guy a chance. And while that somewhat means something to me, I want you to trust God. God has obviously orchestrated this part, that what us is going. So obviously He has it orchestrated for the next person to be here. Just like He had it orchestrated for me to be here. So I want you to trust your leadership. Even when it looks difficult, even when you don't understand it, trust the leadership that is in this room. It's going to has a whole lot of weight on them to walk through the next couple months until somebody gets here, but trust your leadership. Don't ever buck it, don't ever go against it, because all they want is for you guys to look more like Jesus. And so that's what they're going to do. They're going to continue doing that. They're going to continue seeking after Jesus. And if this what we have done is correct, and God is going to bring somebody here that fits here, and is meant to be here. And that guy is going to be the person that leads you guys to look more like Jesus. So trust your leadership. Even when you don't see it, even when it doesn't make sense, even when he's not as funny as I am, just trust your leadership. Okay? Because by trusting your leadership, you're trusting God. Because God has given the leadership, and so therefore they're seeking after God, and so the next person is going to be God. Okay? So trust your leadership. But I do this with the other way. So I'm saying this to the adults. Trust the students. Trust them. So as much as I'm going to give it to you guys, I want the adults to take that as well. They need to trust you. Because what we have strived on in this student ministry is relationships. And so those relationships is how we have grown. And so if you're not willing to trust the adults and they're not willing to trust you, the relationships can't happen. So just as much trust as you have to put it in, they have to put it in you. Okay? So for the adults that are in the room, continue to trust these students. Talk to them. Have interaction with them and make relationships with them. But you have to trust them too. They're not as sneaky as you think they are sometimes. 9. Remember the reason that you're here. Like, I get it that you want to be here for your friends, and I get it because there's some cool things, but ultimately go back to the purpose of why you're here. Like, why we even do this. Why we have so much fun, why this is such a great place. Remember that always, and that's Jesus. Always go back to the purpose. Literally everything that we've ever done in student ministry has always had a purpose, and that purpose was to point you to Jesus, even when it doesn't look like it is. Why do we play stupid games? To get you out of your comfort zone of being like sulking, like, oh. But if you get out of your comfort zone a little bit, because that's exactly what it looks like to follow Jesus. You have to get uncomfortable when you follow Jesus. So when you trust your leadership, go back to the fact of why you're even here. Because you desire a deeper relationship with Jesus, and sometimes you don't know where to go with it. So that's why we're here. So remember the purpose. That it's all for Jesus. It's not to come find your next wife, because it's probably not this room. There's other things that I could totally keep going on about. Always remember that Dylan is the hottest and will always be the hottest. Like, it's not going to change. Just give it up. But this is the other one that I remember going through, and I was like, I'm not a single friend with anybody I was a friend with in school. But the one thing that I am still friends with is the people that have a relationship with Jesus. So always go back to that. Always remember what is the one thing that brings us back together, and that's Jesus. Always. You can have great friends, and you may be friends with some people in high school that you're going to be friends with later in life. But the one thing that always brings all of us back together is Jesus. How else in the world could I be friends with Carl other than Jesus? You said jokes. So I was trying to give you one. Your jokes. But for real, think about it. Like, what is the one thing, like, if you guys walk out of this room, more than likely you're not hanging out with the same people in this room. What is the one thing that brings us all together that we can sit in this room and agree on? That's Jesus. So I want you to remember that. It always goes back to Jesus. And the last one I have is in John chapter 15, verses 10 through 16. Does somebody want to read it? John 15, 10 through 16. Sorry, thanks. Yeah, 10 through 16.
If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. This is my command. Love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friend if you do what I command. I do not call you servants anymore, because the servant doesn't know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce fruit, and that your fruit should remain, so that whatever you may ask the Father in my name, he will give you.
Sorry, 17 says, this is what I command you, to love one another. So the last of all of those things that I have is remember to abide in Jesus. Remember to remain dependent on Jesus. When you do that, to love one another. I know it seems cliche, but the church's mission is to love God and love people. This is what John 15 is talking about. Like, Jesus is giving these last little things before he departs. And I'm not Jesus, not even close. But if you can listen to one last thing that I have for you, is that do you truly depend on Jesus? Because when you truly depend on Jesus and you love one another, you bear the fruit that he's talking about. That you look like Jesus. It's where you look like Jesus that other people want to know. So my thing for you tonight is that you remain dependent on Jesus and that you love one another. Look back at John 15. For all the things that you supposedly don't remember, remember those things. That when it's hard, when it doesn't make sense, when things change in student ministry, when things change in your life, you still remain dependent on Jesus. I don't want you to remain dependent on the student ministry. I don't want you to remain dependent on me, any of the adults that are leaving. I don't want you to remain dependent on your parents. I want you to remain dependent on Jesus. And know that you know that you know have a relationship with Jesus. I heard something the other day and it kind of shocked me on what we've done in church. And what we've done in church is that we've literally almost scared you into Jesus. Like, do you want to go to hell? The only option is you go to heaven or hell. Which one do you want? Well, obviously, that's an easy no-brainer. I want to go to heaven, so yeah. So put your trust and faith in Jesus. Okay, I just want to go to hell. I don't want, you should never do that. It's the worst way ever. Why is it that you've given your life to Christ? Because you're in love with Jesus. Have you truly fell in love with Jesus? Everything that we've walked through in the book of John, everything that's been taught to you over the years by your family, by other churches, ever since you were born, all has to point back to the love that Jesus has for you. That is why it makes us make decisions that we make. This is why it makes us make decisions that we're willing to move across the state and leave literally you guys. The hardest thing that I've ever had to do. Like, I've done some pretty difficult things in my life, and I've talked about the emotion that I've had to go through. And I felt like I was pretty good for it tonight, because I've cried enough. But I couldn't have got there because how much I loved you guys. There's something even more than that, is how much I love Jesus. Remaining dependent on Jesus even when it doesn't make sense. So have you fell in love with Jesus? Have you put your trust and faith in Jesus because you love him? Because you truly fell in love with who Jesus is. Not because you've been scared into Jesus, but because you know that Jesus loved you enough to send his son to die for you. I don't want you to be concerned about like what happens after. I want you to be in love with Jesus right now. So the last thing I have for you is, have you truly put your trust and faith in Jesus because you are truly in love with him? All the other things that I've ever said, listen to that. It all goes back to that, the love of Jesus. Do you know that you know that you know that you put your trust and faith in Jesus? Because putting your trust and faith in Jesus because you're scared to go somewhere else because that's what you were told to do, is not truly putting your trust and faith in Jesus. If you put your trust and faith in Jesus, it's because you've been in love with Jesus. He's changed your life. Just like Dylan said in the miracle, like, you've been transformed. That's what Jesus does. He takes the brokenness that you are and transforms you. And he only does that because you're in love with him. Everything that he